I don't normally do news reports, but this seemed important, and there aren't any good videos about it on YouTube, so bear with me. I began researching this story when I heard about a new plague in the Ukraine. There's a lot of purposeful disinformation out there, as well as a lot of information presented by people who simply don't understand the medicine behind it, as well as a mainstream media blackout on the topic. Hopefully this video helps clear things up and provide a launching point for more research and clarification. On August 17th, Dr. A. True Ott was a guest of Dr. Bill Deagle on the Dr. Deagle Show. I'll link to a recording of the show in the More Info section. He said that a man named Joseph Moshe had called in to his Born on the 4th of July RBN radio show on August 11th, about a week before. The purpose of the show that day had been to compile and discuss evidence of the source of the H1N1 strain. He claimed that Moshe told him that he was a microbiologist from Los Angeles and had evidence that a biological weapon was being developed by Baxter Laboratories in the Ukraine. He said he had documents proving a plague or mutated version of H1N1 would be released in the Ukraine around the end of October under the guise of the flu vaccine. He also said the vaccine contained an additive that weakens the immune system. At first, he didn't think Moshe was legit. The next day's events made him rethink that assumption. Moshe, a 56-year-old American microbiologist with dual citizenship in Israel, apparently felt guilty and couldn't keep the evidence a secret any longer. The day after calling the radio show and not being taken seriously, he awoke to find FBI agents outside his house. He got into his Volkswagen Beetle and headed for the Israeli embassy where he believed he'd be safe. Before he could arrive there, his car was blocked in by armored Humvees, dozens of police, FBI, K-9 units, a tank, a SWAT team, snipers, and a Secret Service. His car was hit by an EMP pulse which knocked out the transmission, his PDA, and his cell phone. They then sprayed tear gas and pepper spray into the car. Moshe, who had worked for Mossad, the intelligence agency of Israel, had been trained to build up a resistance to tear gas, and managed to stay inside his car with the documents. A microwave weapon burned his skin, and a robot was used to remotely break the windows. Moshe was then tasered and dragged from the car at gunpoint, several hours after the standoff began. The mainstream media immediately reported that Moshe was a mentally ill conspiracy theorist criminal who had called in a threat to blow up the White House. Upon further research, Moshe has no history of mental illness, no criminal record, no ties to conspiracy theory groups, and there is no proof he made threats against the White House. The mainstream media has since gone completely silent about this event, which was dubbed the Westwood Standoff. Rumor has it that Moshe was taken to Israel, but he hasn't been heard from since, here, there, or anywhere. If the whistleblowing followed by the violent apprehension the day after didn't convince you, perhaps what appears to be happening now in the Ukraine will. 2 weeks ago, at the end of October, as Moshe predicted, reports began coming out of the Ukraine, where he predicted this would happen, about an especially virulent and deadly infection. It was noteworthy because it was 10 times worse than the H1N1 virus and appeared to primarily attack the victim's lungs. The president of the Ukraine, Viktor Yushchenko, declared martial law, blocked travel, and banned protesting. He's since gone back on those decrees and has downplayed the pandemic and stated that the upcoming election will proceed as normal. In only 2 weeks, the number of infected has skyrocketed to 1.3 million. In a country like the Ukraine, that's a lot of people sick. Hundreds already dead. I mean, in only 2 weeks since it started there, hundreds dead. Doctors, nurses, people, civilians. Whether this is the plague or a mutated form of H1N1 remains to be seen, but it does not appear to be the regular H1N1 flu, which is almost harmless from what most people who've had it have said, similar to any other flu. Apparently it is now spreading to Italy and China. A couple things bother me about this story. One, Moshe appeared to have advanced knowledge of a deadly and highly infectious plague being released in the Ukraine in late October, but was forcefully removed the day after he blew the whistle. 2. There's a lot of confusion and deliberate misinformation coming out of the Ukraine about just exactly what is happening there. The World Health Organization has had test results from the Ukraine for over a week, but won't release them to the public. Why can't we know the cause of the infection that is quickly killing so many people? A side note here, China has identified the plague, the actual plague bacterium, in some of its victims. So we know that there is a resurgence of the plague right now. To do my part to educate and clear up some of the misinformation, I want to briefly explain what the plague is and how it differs from the swine flu. The plague is the name given to infection by the bacteria Yersinia pestis. Yes, it is the same bacteria that caused what was called the Black Death in the 1300s, and it is still active in many parts of the world. A bacteria is a single-celled creature which multiplies and can cause disruption when inside other living things. A virus, such as influenza on the other hand, is a tiny and simple collection of genetic material which can invade living cells in order to replicate itself and destroy the cell in the process. Because this new infection in the Ukraine is spreading so quickly and seems so to primarily affect the victim's lungs, it seems to indicate pneumonic plague rather than the flu. The bacteria that causes the plague can attack different regions of the body, and this is how the types of plague get their names. It's the same bacteria in all cases, it's just where it infects that causes, or that creates the different names for the plague. Bubonic plague attacks the lymphatic system, pneumonic plague attacks the lung tissue, and septicemic plague attacks the bloodstream. If the infection in the Ukraine is the pneumonic plague, that's the lung one, that explains why it spreads so easily. Normally the plague is spread to and from animals like rats and people by fleas. This results in a slow transmission and almost always the bubonic, or lymphatic system plague. But if the bacteria infects the lungs, the plague spreads easily from person to person through saliva, kissing, sharing food, coughing, sneezing, etc. Treatment for the plague is antibiotics, such as gentamicin, but it has to be done within about a day of the symptoms appearing. Failure to do so results in liquefaction of the lung tissue, and the patient drowns in his or her blood. The untreated death rate is 100%. You can see why an outbreak of this form of the plague is especially worrisome. The H1N1 vaccine won't protect you from other viral infections like the seasonal flu, nor will it protect you from bacterial infections like the plague. There isn't even any evidence that it protects against H1N1. But that's the topic for another video. Lastly, remember that a few months ago Baxter shipped out millions of doses of H1N1 vaccine to many countries. By chance, some ferrets were injected with the vaccine, and all promptly died. The vaccine was actually the virus itself, and would have killed millions of people if it had not been for the fluke test on the ferrets. Baxter apologized and claimed it was an oversight. But an oversight of that magnitude would have required hundreds of employees to make the same mistake, and several safety systems to be completely ignored. And of course, this whole event has been swept under the rug. Now, Baxter, which has ties to Obama and his administration, has done it again, but this time successfully. It appears that something has been released in the Ukraine and is rapidly killing many hundreds of people and infecting over 1 million in only 2 weeks. Unprecedented. I hope this video collected most of the pertinent information into one place and provided you with a direction for further research. If you can fill in any holes with verifiable sources, please post in the comment section or message me. I'd love to find more information about Moshe's call to the radio show and about this rapidly spreading infection in the Ukraine the mainstream media won't cover. Please rate, comment, and subscribe to help the message go viral.